Do you like scary stories? Tonight we have more scary stories told in the rain to fall asleep to. Welcome to J&M Paranormal. If this is your first time here, thank you. We hope you enjoy the content. If you do, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss future uploads. If you are returning, thank you for your continued support. Stay tuned for more content on all things dark and mysterious. Now, let's get on with the show. Tom and Sarah decided to go camping deep in the pine woods, a massive forest several miles away from the nearest town. People spoke in whispers about the woods, claiming that strange things happened there. Sudden disappearances, bizarre noises, and even tales of a creature that roamed deep within the forest. Tom, an avid outdoorsman, shrugged off the rumors. It's all stories to keep people from littering or camping irresponsibly, he assured Sarah. Their first day out was idyllic. The sun streamed through the tall pine trees, and the air was thick with the scent of wood and earth. They hiked, fished, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, they built a campfire. The flickering flames cast a warm, comforting glow over their campsite. It wasn't until they had retired to their tent and were drifting off to sleep that they heard it. The low, guttural growl that echoed through the night air, punctuated by what sounded like heavy footsteps. Tom grabbed his flashlight and unzipped the tent, shining the light out into the dark. He saw nothing, probably just a bear or a raccoon. He whispered, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Sarah frowned. That didn't sound like any bear I've ever heard. Are you sure we're safe? We're fine. Don't worry about it, Tom reassured her, zipping up the tent. But the sounds didn't stop. Every few minutes, a rustle, a growl, and those footsteps. Closer each time. Around midnight, the steps seemed to surround their tent. Tom couldn't take it anymore. I'm going to go take a look, he said, slipping on his boots. Be careful, Sarah pleaded, her eyes wide with fear. Tom stepped outside, flashlight in hand, and swept the beam through the trees. Still nothing, but the sense of dread filled him, a raw animal instinct screaming at him to run, to hide. Then he heard a snap like a twig breaking, but heavier, like the sound of bone, and it was very close. Whirling around, his flashlight caught a glimpse of it. An enormous creature covered in dark, matted fur. Its eyes glowed a terrible yellow, reflecting the light in a way that seemed almost malevolent. It stood on two legs, towering above him, and as Tom's eyes traveled down, he saw its claws. Long, twisted things that looked sharp enough to cut stone. It let out an inhuman shriek that paralyzed him with terror. Then, with speed that belied its size, it lunged. Sarah screamed when she heard Tom's agonized shout, abruptly cut off. She sat paralyzed in the tent, listening to the rustling and growling outside. It felt like hours, but must have been only minutes. Then, silence. It took Sarah what felt like an eternity to summon the courage to open the tent flap. When she finally did, Tom was gone. All that remained was his flashlight, lying on the ground, still on but flickering as though it too had been traumatized. Sarah was never found, and the search teams that went looking for her and Tom returned empty-handed, rattled by the inexplicable feeling of dread that overcame them the deeper they went into pine woods. The forest seemed to close in around them, as if warning them to go back, to leave its secrets undisturbed. And so, the whispers grew louder, the stories more numerous, but one thing remained constant. No one who heard the growls and the footsteps ever returned to tell the tale, swallowed whole by a forest that was as old as it was malevolent, a forest that hid a creature too horrifying to be named, lurking deep within, always hungry, forever waiting. It was the summer of 1976, and the sun hung low in the sky as five friends, Mia, Chris, Rachel, Ethan, and Kyle, drove down a dusty, deserted road in their battered van. The aged map they were following seemed to predate the area's last known update, but they were in high spirits, eager to spend a weekend away from the city and in nature. Rachel, flipping through an old tourist guidebook, mentioned an abandoned apple orchard up ahead. According to local legend, it was haunted by the spirit of a disturbed man named Horace, who had been accused of killing travelers who strayed too close to his property. Of course, everyone laughed it off, and they decided to set up camp nearby, treating the story as nothing more than campfire fodder. As darkness fell, the friends sit around the fire, cooking hot dogs and sharing tales. Just when they started to forget about the local legend, an ungodly scream shattered the tranquil night. Must be some animal, Chris dismissed, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. They were all a little uneasy, but eventually shrugged it off, attributing it to the spooky atmosphere. Ethan and Kyle decided to explore the orchard, armed with flashlights and a sense of bravado. They meandered through the gnarled trees. They were joking about the tale of Horace when Ethan tripped over something. As they pointed the flashlight to the ground, they saw a wristed chain, attached to a hook, half buried in the dirt. "Let's get out of here," Ethan muttered, suddenly sobered. When they returned to the camp, they didn't mention what they'd found. After a fitful night, they decided to pack up and leave first thing in the morning. But the van wouldn't start. "We must have drained the battery last night," Kyle cursed. "I'm going to look for a nearby house or something. Maybe someone can give us a jump." Mia insisted on going with him. Armed with a map and walking for about an hour, they finally stumbled upon an old, decrepit farmhouse. They knocked on the door and were greeted by a middle-aged woman who seemed somewhat off but kindly offered to help. She led them to a barn where they could find some tools. Mia's eyes widened as they entered the barn. Chains, hooks, and what looked like human bones were scattered all around. She finally understood. Horace was real, and he was there, standing in the corner, tall and menacing, wearing a mask made of human skin. Before they could scream, the woman slammed the barn door shut, locking them in. Back at the camp, Chris, Rachel, and Ethan grew worried. Just as they decided to look for Mia and Kyle, they heard the roar of a chainsaw, and a figure emerged from the shadows. One by one, they were hunted down. Chris fell first, then Rachel. Ethan managed to run, but was eventually cornered in the orchard, where he met the same fate. The next morning, the farmhouse woman updated her tourist guidebook with new cautionary tales for those daring to venture near the orchard. As for Horace, he had a few more masks to add to his collection, and so, the orchard remained haunted. The van rusted away into the soil, and the tale of the 5 friends became yet another chapter in the chilling legend of the Orchard Slaughterhouse. On a quiet, peaceful night in the small town of Elmsworth, Sheriff Jane Myers sat in her office reviewing case files. Her peaceful moment was shattered when a deputy burst into her office. "Sheriff, the hospital called. Tom Blackwood escaped." Jane's face turned pale, her eyes narrowing. "How did this happen?" "We're not sure, Mom. They just said he's gone, and they found the 2 guards unconscious. Alert the town. I want a curfew in place by nightfall. No one goes out after dark," she commanded. Tom Blackwood was no ordinary man. 20 years ago, on Halloween night, he went on a killing spree that left 5 dead on Maple Street. He was captured and sent to a mental institution. The event scarred the community forever. As the sun set, news of Tom Blackwood's escape spread like wildfire. Parents rushed to pick up their children. Stores closed early, and the streets were deserted. At the Smith residence on Maple Street, teenagers Emily and Jake decided they were too old for curfews. "Mom, we're not kids anymore," Emily protested. "I don't care. This is serious, and you're staying inside," her mother, Sarah, retorted. Despite the warnings, Emily and Jake couldn't resist the temptation. They decided to sneak out through the back door. The duo made their way to the abandoned Miller house at the end of Maple Street. According to local legend, it was haunted. Think Blackwood would hide here? Jake wondered aloud. I doubt it, Emily responded. It's just a dumb story. Just then, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they found nothing. It's just the wind, Emily reassured. They reached the door of the Miller house, only to find it ajar. Should we go in? Jake asked. Before Emily could respond, they heard a chilling whisper. Turn back. They looked at each other, their faces white with fear. Ignoring the warning, they stepped inside. The interior of the Miller house was as creepy as its reputation. Dusty furniture, broken windows, and dim lighting made for a disturbing atmosphere. Suddenly, a shadow darted across the hallway. Emily and Jake screamed, rushing out of the house. They made it to the yard, gasping for breath, only to find a tall, menacing figure standing near the fence, silhouetted by the moonlight. It's Blackwood, Jake yelled, terrified. They sprinted back toward their home, the shadowy figure giving chase. Emily and Jake bolted into their house, locking the door behind them. They yelled for their mom. Sarah came rushing down. What happened? Blackwood. He's here, Emily shouted. Before anyone could react, the front door burst open, and Tom Blackwood stepped in, wielding a knife. Sarah screamed, pulling her kids behind her. Just then, a gunshot echoed through the house. Sheriff Jane Myers stood in the doorway, her gun smoking. Tom Blackwood, your reign of terror ends now, she declared. Blackwood lunged at her, but Jane fired again, this time hitting him squarely in the chest. He fell to the ground, lifeless. The town breathed a sigh of relief. Maple Street was safe again, thanks to Sheriff Jane Myers. As Halloween approached, families decorated their homes, children planned their costumes, and life returned to normal. Yet, the haunting memories remained, a chilling reminder that evil could lurk anywhere, even on the peaceful streets of Elmsworth. Emily and Mark, newlyweds, moved into their first house, a charming suburban abode at 16 Maple Drive. Excited to start their life together, they overlooked the significantly lower price tag compared to similar homes in the neighborhood. Can you believe we're actually homeowners? Emily exclaimed, placing a box labeled kitchen on the counter. I know, it's surreal, Mark replied, pulling out his new camera. I'm going to document every moment, for memories. Weeks passed smoothly, punctuated by unpacking and housewarming parties. Mark's video logs captured mundane snippets. Emily planting roses in the garden, the two trying and failing to assemble furniture, and evenings curled up on the sofa. However, odd things began to happen. Weird, Emily said one morning, holding a cabinet door. I swear I closed this last night. We must have been tired. Mark shrugged. Let's not overthink it. Mark's camera started picking up anomalies. Muffled noises, strange shadows. Once, it even shut off inexplicably during the night. Reviewing the footage one evening, Emily paused. Did you hear that? It's like someone's whispering. Mark replayed the clip, eyes narrowing. I can't make it out, but it's definitely weird. Things escalated. Objects moved on their own. Doors slammed. The camera caught a chair being dragged across the living room at 3:07 a.m. while they slept unaware. Okay, this is freaky, Mark said, reviewing the footage. Should we call someone? Like who? A priest? Ghostbusters? Emily laughed nervously, though her eyes searched the room. Emily began to feel watched. Sometimes she would wake up in the middle of the night, claiming to have seen a figure standing at the foot of the bed. "Mark, I can't stay here. Something's wrong with this house." She finally broke down one evening. Mark, tired and skeptical, relented. "Fine, let's get a paranormal investigator or something." Dr. Susan Harris, a renowned paranormal investigator, arrived with her team and equipment. They set up thermal cameras, EMF meters, and voice recorders throughout the house. "What have you found?" Emily asked, her eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. "It's not good," Dr. Harris said gravely. "There's a malevolent entity here. We caught some EVPs. It keeps saying leave." Determined to end the nightmare, Dr. Harris began a cleansing ritual. However, midway, the lights flickered, and a deafening scream echoed through the house. "Stop," a voice thundered, captured on the voice recorder. Objects flew off shelves, the air icy with malevolence. The team rushed to complete the ritual, chanting louder, drowning out the cacophony of disembodied screams. The air cleared, the cameras and EMF meters stabilized. Dr. Harris exhaled deeply. "I think it's gone, but I'd suggest not staying here any longer." Emily and Mark didn't need further convincing. They sold the house, taking a loss but grateful to escape. Mark deleted all footage, unable to bear watching them. The house at 16 Maple Drive went back on the market, the realtor confident that the lowered price would draw another unsuspecting couple soon. Unbeknownst to them, Mark's old camera lay forgotten in a closet, its red light blinking, still recording. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Leave us a comment below, and while you're there, hit the like button. Until next time, stay curious